The Caribbean, 1718. An age of empire, of vast fortunes carried on the tide. But on these waters, another kingdom reigned, a kingdom of blood, fear, and absolute, terrifying freedom. In this kingdom, one man was not merely a king, but a force of nature. A spectre of pure, unyielding defiance. His name was Charles Vane. He did not seek treasure as much as he sought confrontation. He did not want riches, he wanted the world to burn. While others played the game of piracy, Vane played a different game entirely. It was a game of contempt, for law, for order, even for the pirate code itself. This is the story of the man who defied everyone. The pirate who spat in the face of kings, who turned on his own kind, and who met his end with the same fury with which he lived. Before the Black Flag, there was the Union Jack. The War of the Spanish Succession had turned the Caribbean into a crucible of naval warfare, forging sailors into killers. Men like Charles Vane learned their trade here, in state-sanctioned violence. They were privateers, legal pirates, honing their skills under the veneer of patriotism. But when the war ended in 1713, thousands of these men were cast adrift. Their skills, sailing, fighting, killing, were no longer profitable to the crown. They were abandoned, left to starve by the very empire they had served. For many, there was only one path left, to raise a new flag and declare war on the world. At the heart of this new war was a lawless island paradise, New Providence, in the Bahamas. Its main settlement, Nassau, became the infamous Republic of Pirates. Here, there was no king, no governor, no law but the will of the captains. It was a chaotic, democratic experiment fueled by plunder and rum. It was in this melting pot of rebellion that Charles Vane found his true calling. He quickly gained a reputation not for his charisma, but for his sheer, unadulterated aggression. He served under the pirate captain Henry Jennings, participating in a daring raid on a Spanish treasure fleet salvage camp in 1715. It was a baptism in blood and silver. But Vane was not content to be a subordinate. By 1717, he commanded his own ship, the sloop Lark. He was now a captain, a master of his own violent destiny. His methods were uniquely brutal. Vane perfected the art of psychological warfare, understanding that fear was a weapon more potent than any cannon. He would torture captains for information, not just for the location of treasure, but for the sheer pleasure of dominance. His cruelty became his signature. Nassau was a fraternity of outlaws, home to legends like the formidable Edward Blackbeard Teach and the Prince of Pirates, Sam Bellamy. Vane was the black sheep of this dark family. While Blackbeard cultivated a terrifying image and Bellamy espoused a twisted revolutionary ideology, Vane was simply a vessel of pure rage. He had no grand philosophy, only contempt. The pirate republic, however, could not last. Its very existence was an intolerable insult to the British Empire. A storm was gathering, an imperial response designed to crush Nassau forever. The instrument of this storm was a man named Woodes Rogers. A celebrated privateer himself, he was appointed governor of the Bahamas and sent with a fleet and an offer. The offer was the king's pardon. Any pirate who surrendered by a set date would have their crimes forgiven. It was a choice: return to civilization or be hunted down as an enemy of mankind. The news split the pirate republic. For many, like Benjamin Hornigold, the pardon was a golden opportunity, a way out of a life that could only end at the gallows. They had grown weary of the constant danger, the fleeting nature of their wealth. The pardon offered them a future. But for Charles Vane, surrender was unthinkable. To him, the pardon was not mercy, it was a leash. An attempt by the world he despised to chain him once more. He would rather die a free man than live as a pardoned dog. On a hot summer day in 1718, Woodes Rogers' fleet arrived at the mouth of Nassau's harbor. The imposing warships formed a blockade, trapping the pirates within. Panic and debate seized the town. Most captains saw the futility of a fight. They chose the pardon, lowering their black flags in submission. All except one. Charles Vane saw not an insurmountable obstacle, but a challenge. He saw an opportunity for one last, glorious act of defiance. He concocted a plan of breathtaking audacity. He would not surrender. He would not be taken. He would burn his way to freedom. Vane took his largest prize ship, loaded it with every flammable substance he could find, and turned it into a massive floating bomb. A fireship. Under the cover of darkness, with his cannons firing to create a diversion, Vane and his men set the fireship ablaze and aimed it directly at the heart of the Royal Navy blockade. The British sailors watched in horror as a vision from hell drifted towards them. The inferno illuminated the night, a floating pyre sent to shatter their formation. Chaos erupted in the blockading fleet. Captains frantically ordered their crews to cut anchor cables and scatter. The perfect, disciplined line dissolved into a panicked scramble to escape the flames. The fireship exploded in a cataclysmic blast, sending a shower of burning debris across the water. It was a message, written in fire and smoke, a message of pure defiance. And in the chaos, under the pall of smoke and confusion, Vane's small sloop slipped through the gap he had created. He sailed out into the open sea, firing a final, parting shot at the governor's ship. He had escaped. While the greatest pirates of the age bent the knee, Charles Vane had spat in the king's eye and sailed away, a legend forged in a single night of fire. Now a declared enemy of the British Empire, Vane was a man unchained. He embarked on a campaign of terror across the Caribbean, his rage and bitterness fueling his every action. He plundered ships with a renewed ferocity, his reputation for cruelty growing with every vessel he took. He was no longer just a pirate, he was a scourge of the seas. During this time, a charismatic but less ruthless pirate named John Rackham served as Vane's quartermaster. Rackham, known as Calico Jack for his colorful attire, was a pragmatist. The quartermaster was the crew's voice, responsible for discipline and the division of plunder. A delicate balance of power existed between the captain's absolute authority and the quartermaster's democratic role. Vane's defiance, however, was beginning to border on the self-destructive. He sought conflict for its own sake, often placing his crew in unnecessary danger. The breaking point came in November 1718. Vane's flotilla encountered a large, powerful French man-o'-war. For any sane pirate, the only option was to flee. Vane, true to his nature, ordered an attack. He saw a chance for a glorious, perhaps final, battle. But his crew saw only suicide. The crew refused the order. It was a direct challenge to his authority, a mutiny in all but name. Vane, a man who lived by intimidation, was suddenly powerless. Calico Jack seized the moment. He spoke for the crew, arguing that Vane's brand of piracy was no longer profitable, only suicidal. He called for a vote, as was the pirate's way. The vote was nearly unanimous. Captain Charles Vane was deposed, branded a coward by the very men he had led. The ultimate defiance had turned against him. By the pirate code, he was cast out. Vane and his few remaining loyalists were given a small, stripped-down sloop and sent on their way. He was an exile, a king without a kingdom. The pirate who was too extreme even for the pirates of Nassau was now alone. His downward spiral had begun. But Charles Vane was not a man to fade away quietly. He attempted to rebuild his reputation, capturing a few small ships in the Bay of Honduras. But his name no longer inspired the same terror, he was a shadow of his former self. Then, in February 1719, fate delivered its final, crushing blow. A hurricane of immense power caught Vane's small fleet, a force of nature far more savage than he could ever be. His ship was torn to pieces by the storm. The man who had commanded the sea was now at its mercy, thrown into the churning abyss. He washed ashore on a small, uninhabited island off the coast of Honduras. He was a castaway, a king of nothing, his only subjects the crabs and gulls. For weeks, he survived on fish and turtle eggs, a primitive existence for a man who once held the shipping lanes of an empire in his grasp. Eventually, a passing ship spotted his signal fire. Hope, for a moment, flickered. But it was to be the cruelest of ironies. The ship was captained by a man named Halford, an old acquaintance from Vane's privateering days. A man who knew exactly who he was rescuing. Halford, a former buccaneer now trying to live a respectable life, refused to take Vane aboard. He knew Vane would corrupt his crew and bring ruin upon them all. He sailed away, leaving Vane to his fate. Another ship eventually found him, its captain unaware of his identity. Vane was taken aboard, but his luck had run out. On board was a former member of Captain Halford's crew. His identity exposed, he was clapped in irons. The man who had defied an empire was now a helpless captive, bound for Port Royal, Jamaica, and the hangman's noose. Port Royal was the epicenter of British justice in the Caribbean. Here, the full weight of the law, the system Vane so despised, would be brought to bear against him. His trial, in March 1721, was a formality. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Numerous captains and sailors testified to his acts of piracy and cruelty. But Vane offered no defense. He showed no remorse. He met the accusations with the same contempt he had shown the world his entire life. He refused to call witnesses, refused to plead his case. He treated the proceedings as a farce, a final, meaningless ritual before the inevitable end. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was death by hanging. Charles Vane, the unyielding rebel, had finally been cornered. On March 29, 1721, he was taken to the gallows. Even in his final moments, he offered no prayers, no apologies. Only silence. His body was then gibbeted, hung in a metal cage at Gun Cay, at the entrance to Port Royal's harbor. A gruesome warning to all other pirates. The man who lived by his own rules had become a tool of the state, a grotesque monument to the consequences of defiance. Charles Vane's legacy is not one of treasure or tactical genius. He was not the most successful pirate of the Golden Age. Many, like Blackbeard or Bartholomew Roberts, amassed far greater fortunes. His legacy is something more fundamental, more elemental. He represents the purest spirit of piracy, absolute, uncompromising, self-destructive freedom. He was the embodiment of contempt for a world that he felt had betrayed him. He never bent, he never broke his personal code, and he paid the ultimate price for it. In an age of compromise, where even his fellow pirates sought pardons and paths to legitimacy, Vane remained true to his own violent nature. He was the pirate who defied everyone, to the very bitter end. The Golden Age of Piracy was a brief, violent flame that burned brightly before being extinguished by the forces of empire and order. It was a rebellion born of desperation. Figures like Blackbeard became legends through theater and fear. Sam Bellamy became a folk hero through a romanticized, revolutionary rhetoric. But Vane offers no such comfort. There is nothing romantic about him. He is the brutal, inconvenient truth at the heart of the pirate myth. He reminds us that this was not an age of adventure, but an age of profound violence, waged by damaged men against a world that had no place for them. His escape from Nassau was not just an escape from the Royal Navy. It was a rejection of society itself, of its laws, its pardons, and its promises of a quiet life. The mutiny against him reveals the inherent contradiction of the pirate life. Even this republic of thieves had its limits, its own form of social contract, which Vane ultimately violated. Piracy required a degree of pragmatism and cooperation to be profitable. Vane's pathology was his inability to compromise, to be anything other than a force of pure opposition. His shipwreck and isolation serve as a powerful metaphor. The man who rejected all of humanity was ultimately left with none of it, stranded by a force far more powerful than any empire. The trial was the final collision between two irreconcilable worlds. The rigid, ordered world of British law, and Vane's chaotic, personal war against everything. In the end, the system he fought against co-opted his very body, turning it into a silent sermon hanging at the harbor's mouth. His ultimate defiance was met with the ultimate act of control. The story of Charles Vane is a cautionary tale, but what it warns against is complex. Is it a warning against lawlessness, or a warning against a society that creates such men? He was a product of his time, a brutal, violent era that taught him to be a weapon, then discarded him when his purpose was served. His piracy was, perhaps, the only logical continuation of his training. While other pirates have been absorbed into popular culture as romantic anti-heroes, Vane resists this transformation. He remains stubbornly, authentically terrifying. He forces us to look past the fantasy of skull and crossbones and see the grim reality. The hunger, the rage, and the profound alienation that drove men to declare war on their own species. The dark tide of history washes away names and fortunes, leaving only echoes. The echo of Charles Vane is not the jingle of gold, but the sound of a scream against the wind, a final, unending roar of defiance. To understand the Golden Age of Piracy, one must understand the forces that created it. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 ended a continental war but began a personal one for thousands of sailors. These men were not born pirates. They were forged in the Royal Navy's brutal discipline, where life was cheap and violence was a daily currency. Nassau was more than a den of thieves, it was a sanctuary from this tyranny. It offered a form of radical democracy where the crew elected their captain and could depose him at will. This pirate code was the bedrock of their society. It ensured a fair division of plunder and maintained order on a ship full of heavily armed men. It was the law in a lawless world. Vane's story is unique because he seemed to hold as much contempt for this pirate democracy as he did for the monarchies of Europe. His only guiding principle was his own will. When Woodes Rogers arrived, he brought not just ships, but an idea more dangerous to piracy than any cannon, the idea of forgiveness, of a way back. This offer fractured the pirate brotherhood. It separated the pragmatic businessmen, like Hornigold, from the true believers, the ideologues, and the pure anarchists like Vane. Vane's fireship attack was a masterpiece of asymmetrical warfare. Using the enemy's size and rigid formation against them, he created a path to freedom through chaos. His post-pardon career was one of pure vengeance. He seemed to target ships from Bermuda and Jamaica, places that had embraced the new order and turned against his kind. The conflict with Calico Jack was inevitable. Jack represented the future of piracy, less about terror and more about profit and flamboyance. He was a populist, where Vane was a tyrant. Being voted out was a humiliation Vane could never recover from. To be deemed unworthy by the only society that ever accepted him was a wound deeper than any sword could inflict. The hurricane was the final act of a Greek tragedy. A force of pure, untamable nature rose up to destroy a man who believed himself to be the same. His survival on the island stripped him of his power. A captain is nothing without his ship and crew. A pirate is nothing without the sea to plunder. He was reduced to a mere man. The betrayal by Captain Halford is a telling detail. It shows how toxic Vane's reputation was. Even a former compatriot saw him as a disease to be avoided at all costs. His eventual capture was mundane, almost pathetic. Not in a blaze of glory, but through simple recognition. The great defiant pirate, undone by a familiar face. At his trial, his silence was his final weapon. By refusing to engage with the court's legitimacy, he denied them the satisfaction of a broken, repentant sinner. The gibbet was a tool of terror, designed to demoralize. The body would hang for months, decomposing in public view, a constant reminder of the empire's long reach and merciless justice. The story of piracy is often told through its most charismatic figures. But perhaps its truest nature is found in its most vicious. In men like Charles Vane. He serves as a dark mirror, reflecting the hypocrisy of an age that built an empire on conquest and slavery, yet condemned men for doing the same on a smaller scale. He remains a paradox, a failure as a pirate, who never achieved great wealth, yet a triumph of will, who never compromised his defiant spirit. The darkness he embodied was not born in a vacuum. It was the shadow cast by the bright, burning light of empire, a light that consumed so many in its quest for power and glory. To remember Charles Vane is to remember that history is not just a story of winners and losers, of heroes and villains. It is also the story of the unreconciled, the defiant, and the damned. The world moved on from the age of sail and pirates. Empires rose and fell. But the spirit of absolute defiance, the will to stand against the entire world, that is a story that never truly ends. The transition from privateer to pirate was a fine line, often just a piece of paper. For men like Vane, the war never truly ended, only the enemy changed. Life in Nassau was precarious. It was a constant negotiation of alliances, a delicate balance between total freedom and the collective need for security against a hostile world. Vane's preferred vessel, the sloop, was not a ship of the line. It was small, fast, and agile, a perfect reflection of his hit-and-run, opportunistic style of warfare. His reputation for cruelty was a calculated business decision. A ship that surrendered without a fight was infinitely more profitable than one that had to be destroyed. Unlike many pirates who showed a degree of mercy to common sailors, Vane made no such distinctions. To him, anyone who served the system was part of the system. The arrival of Woodes Rogers was the beginning of the end for the Pirate Republic. He was a former pirate hunter, and he understood their psychology perfectly. The pardon was a brilliant tactic. It weaponized the pirates' own self-interest against their collective strength, turning them against each other without firing a shot. Vane's decision to sacrifice a prize ship as a fire vessel was telling. He valued destruction over possession, the grand gesture over material gain. His escape was a hollow victory. He had his freedom, but he had lost his sanctuary. He was now a true outlaw, hunted not just by the Navy, but by former pirates turned pirate hunters. The presence of women pirates like Vane and Mary Red, who later joined Calico Jack's crew, highlights the changing nature of piracy that Vane was rebelling against. Vane's refusal to attack the French warship was not born of fear, but of a skewed sense of risk. To him, a risky fight was worthwhile, a suicidal one was not. His crew disagreed on the distinction. Being marooned was a common pirate punishment, considered a fate worse than death. It was a slow execution by nature, a sentence of profound psychological torment. The legal system in Port Royal was swift and merciless. Admiralty courts operated without juries, and the judges were often colonial officials with a vested interest in stamping out piracy. The practice of gibbeting was a form of political theater. It was a message from the state to its people, a display of what happens when its authority is challenged. Vane's story did not end with his death. It became a chapter in books like Captain Charles Johnson's A General History of the Pirates, which shaped our modern image of piracy. This book, a mix of fact and fiction, cemented the legends of Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Vane. But it often sanded down the edges, making monsters more palatable for a mass audience. Vane's true legacy is his authenticity. In a world of performance and reputation building, he was brutally, relentlessly himself. A creature of pure, undiluted rage. He represents a dead end in the evolution of piracy. His path was one of total annihilation, leaving no room for growth, negotiation, or survival. It was magnificent, but it was terminal. The forces of history, economics, politics, technology, eventually rendered piracy obsolete. The state became too organized, the oceans too policed. But the idea of the pirate, the idea Vane embodied, endures. He remains a chilling figure because he is not an outlaw we can easily romanticize. He is a testament to the fact that some men don't want treasure, or power, or even freedom. Some men just want to watch the world burn.